Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Welcome back to the program, and let's get into the first interview today. And I was telling you just before the break that Tunisia's President Kais Saied last week issued a presidential order granting him powers to appoint the head of that country's independent high authority for elections. Now, this move comes just before a popular referendum planned for the 25th of July. In the past, the head of the electoral authority was elected by members of parliament, which Said decided to permanently dissolve at the end of March, a move that has been widely criticized as unconstitutional. Now, last year, Said announced a political roadmap which will culminate in a referendum on the constitution on the July the 25th. As we mentioned, now President Kais Saied has dissolved the judiciary and runs the country by presidential decree since last year, July, after a coup happened. And you're looking at this and you're hearing this and you're thinking, from a country that was the birthplace of the Arab Spring, what is going on in this North African state? And has President Said Kais become rogue? Has he lost his legitimacy? I have a special guest on the issue, senior researcher at the Afro-Middle East Centre, Ebrahim Deen. He joins me on the line. Assalamu alaikum, Ibrahim. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam, and thanks for having me.
Jazakallah khair for your time, Ibrahim. Ibrahim, isn't that the burning question? Has Tunisia's president Kais Saied, has he gone rogue? That's what everybody's asking right now.
I think so. There's two components looking at Kais Saied. One is you have to look at the fact that he does seem to have gone wrong, because he was democratically elected in 2019.
Right.
One, he was elected. Two, he wanted political reform. That was the one thing he wanted to do, and he wasn't able to do it earlier on. But now, in the past year, what has happened is he increasingly got support from Egypt and the United Arab Emirates. And so this has allowed him to take moves that have actually circumvented, the parliamentary and the political process. Now, what aids that is the fact that Tunisia, over the past 11 years, has gone down economically. We South Africans had a transition, and there were those steps in 2003, 2004, saying that the poverty rate for South Africans was higher than it was during the height of apartheid, or the ending stages of apartheid, because the transitions always do lead to economic instability. And what's happened similarly in Tunisia, this economic instability has meant that many became disillusioned with the political process. Tunisia has already three democratic elections in 2011. And so, when Kais Saied initially done this move in July last year, he actually had much support, because people said the politicians are doing nothing. Maybe the leader was a bit strong, who can start solving the economy, and that allowed him to do what he's currently doing.
Okay, but let's look at some of the reforms that he's pushing, right? So he dissolved the parliament. He's running the country by presidential decree. There's a referendum that is planned for July. So this move that he's actually making now, granting him powers to appoint the head of Tunisia's independent high authority, how will this impact the referendum? That's the referendum is different, but there's going to be elections as well in December. Do you think he's preparing to rig the elections?
It does seem as. There certainly be no other reason as to why he would want to appoint his own electoral commission. As we see, you did rest the litany of moves that he has made since July last year, which has been dissolving parliament, dissolving, even worse, the independent judiciary committee, and now putting up his own judiciary. Now dissolving the electoral commission. Dissolving basically much of freedom of speech, taking control of the state broadcaster. And so all these moves have actually pointed to him becoming increasingly dictatorial. And I think, as I say, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely.
They started off this by with the politicians, and he's now gone to all these independent institutions. Tunisia did have a few independent institutions, and now they no longer are independent. Now, yes, these moves are unconstitutional, as the former head now of the Independent Electoral Commission said. The question, though, is can he or will he be allowed to continue with this dictatorship, because the only way a dictatorship flourishes in a country like Tunisia, which is so economically dependent, is if it's allowed by regional powers and the international community. And currently he receives support from the Saudis, from the Emiratis. And so, that's allowing him basically to skirt the democratic process. The referendum is going to happen. It's very likely that there won't be much votes, similar to the online referendum that we had earlier in January.
Right.
But he will rig the process just to allow him to continue in power and to then run the election, which has been happening in December.
Ibrahim, Tunisia was basically is the country that sparked off the Arab Spring. We all remember the story of that the Jasmine Revolution, and how the 26-year-old street vendor Mohammed Bouazizi, who basically burnt himself or set himself alight after when he was protesting how he had been treated by the police, the Tunisian police, and that sparked off the Arab Spring. It sparked off the revolution that got rid of Ben Ali as the president, and he actually fled the country. And it's the first time that an Arab dictatorship was actually overthrown by a popular uprising. So my question to you, Ibrahim, is, since Tunisia is sort of the spark that gave way to the Arab Spring, is it not somewhat I think tragic, if for lack of a better word, that it seems to be slowly seeping back into dictatorship?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with you. Tunisia was one of the success stories, and we always heralded it as a success story, even after Egypt, after things happened in Libya, after the situation went there in Yemen, races in Syria, Bahrain. It was the one success story. And it does seem very tragic that the dictatorships have actually managed to, restructure themselves, the Saudis, the Emiratis, Qataris, to an extent, and have actually managed to fund counter-revolution. And actually, basically the ending of Tunisia would be, in a sense, the ending of this wave of the Arab uprising. We already see, for example, the military consolidate control in Sudan, which happened after Tunisia, which was one of the countries that people thought maybe will, carry the baton run. But it seems that in Sudan, things have really gone, bad. So, it's tragic, but, in saying so, there is a quarterly of citizens and populations and people between probably the ages of 20 and 40. And therefore, Tunisia, it's 10 years now, have had a democratic process. For Egypt, it is 2 years. For Sudan, it may have been 2 years as well. And, these lessons will be learned and hopefully, put to better use in the future. I mean, the big issue in uprising and, speaking to any political party leaders, they haven't focused enough on the economics. They were focusing too much on the politics. And, maybe in future uprising, this will be a lesson learned. And also, trying to get rid of the old regime a lot quicker, not just trying for negotiated revolution. The sooner would be more amenable and susceptible to counter-revolution. But it is very tragic that, it's now 11 years since the uprising in Tunisia, and the country now is probably worse off than in the latter stages of Ben Ali, because Ben Ali has some constraints on his power, so it doesn't seem to have any.
Ibrahim, how about the opposition movement? I'm told there's a Nahda movement. Do you think it's a strong enough counter to the type of power grab or ambitious power grab that we are seeing so far from Said himself?
Nahda's leadership has been criticized. Nahda itself is in flux. Khanouchi's control of the party, and many have criticized the strategy, showing that it's too accommodating in the initial stage. But yes, there is a political opposition movement. Virtually every political party are against stage coup. The trade union movement is against stage coup. But, what we're seeing is increasingly this lack of focus on the economy means that the politicians are unable to talk to the population. And so, there has been protests, but the protest numbers are like 10,000, 15,000. In the population of 2 million, where it's not as big protest as you would think it would be, considering what trade is doing. So is, the political opposition is united in opposition in the sense of the political parties are united in opposition. But one, they don't have any means of power. They don't control the state broadcaster. The Indian military and army is under control of the president. The judiciary and now the independent commission, electoral commission, is under the control of the president. And more significantly is the fact that really these countries, such as Saudi Arabia, such as the United Arab Emirates, are actually likely chip in if Saudi needs money or finances. And so that leads them into they're basically in a corner that yes, Mahta is the one thing they have succeeded in that all the parties are coalesced against the coup. That if you don't have any of these means, financial, political, then if you're not being able or not able enough to appeal to the population and spur on large protests, it's very difficult to see them being able to stand up to say it.
Ibrahim, you're talking about people standing up. I know we've been talking about the counter forces against Said Khais, but we mentioned the fact that Tunisia is the original country that actually sparked off the Arab Spring. Do you have any hope that another popular uprising might just be initiated by ordinary Tunisians who think that no, this has gone too far? Our country is headed or is in a dictatorship, and they're going to wake up and then maybe have an Arab Spring 2.0. Do you think that's possible?
I mean, there's always the possibility, right? We always have to have hope. That's how we live. That's the one thing. But two is, economically, the situation has gotten worse. And so the economics that actually allowed, say, to carry out the coup. And so Tunisia currently is in the midst of trying to negotiate an IMF bailout, which would likely cause structural adjustment program if it actually is accepted. So, if the economics doesn't get dealt with properly from trade, and if he focuses on the politics as he seems to be also doing, very soon Tunisians will actually be fed up of him, and probably there will be an uprising. The question, though, is, unlike NAFTA, unlike the former political, the past 10 years of democratic and participatory processes, we don't know if they would just send out the army to quell these protests. But, the economy does seem to be faltering, and that, if it lasts for a lot longer, will actually cause people to become disillusioned as how they were disillusioned, with the political elite.
Ibrahim, thank you very much for this. I think I just have one last question, and that is the election in December. In terms of that election in December, that's planned for December, do you think? Do you have any hope that it might continue or go ahead, or do you think that will be perhaps held in a democratic manner, or do you think the whole process has already been spoiled even before the elections? Elections take place.
I think that's the big issue. If you're supporting the electoral commission, you're dictating the process. So that's number one. Two is the referendum before the election. So it's actually going to dictate the constitutional process and the constitutional mandate through which and by which the election can happen. So those two big issues are controlled by him, and that is likely to mean that he will likely be, or his party will likely be victorious in the election, because unless you want to restructure the political process, but there's going to be a parliamentary election. So people say to him, now whether they involve after that may be something that we can speculate about. But it does seem as if it's going to be those Arab elections. It seems a bit more strategic to range in with 98% and 96% like CC and Assad, maybe range with 70% or 75%. But it doesn't seem as if there's really going to be any contestation, unless, of course, the international community, the US, the UK, those people making big noises about Ukraine actually start looking at the countries and actually trying to maintain the democratic process. But Macron's victory in France is not good for that. So it doesn't seem as if things are going to happen.
Right. Ebrahim Deen, Jazakallah khair for your time once again. Always a pleasure to speak to you. May Allah reward you for your work, and thank you very much for making this easy for us to understand, and the audience as well, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Nice to hear you back on it.
Jazakallah. Ebrahim Deen, senior researcher at the Afro-Middle East Centre, breaking down the situation in Tunisia for us. It looks, if it looks like a bird and flies like a bird, then it must be a bird. And him giving us his analysis of the situation there, like if it looks like a dictatorship, if it flies like a dictatorship, it possibly quite is another dictatorship in the making. But he also cautions that the faltering economy and the hardship that has impacted the Tunisian people has made the situation somewhat complicated. And of course, inshallah, we'll keep our tabs on the Tunisian situation. But watching it, for me, it's just really wild how this country that was once the beacon of freedom in the Arab world and really sparked off the Arab Spring that basically overran the Arab world is now in the choke grip of this man, Saeed Qais Saeed, who is the president, and he's slowly dismantling democratic ideals and seems to be building up his autocratic, dictatorship. But anyway, as we said, we're going to keep our tabs on this one, inshallah al-aziz, and keep you updated as to exactly how the situation does develop. We're going to take a short break, but before we do, quick announcement here. Sentio is an ethically based asset manager that is focused on delivering superior risk-adjusted returns for their clients regardless of market conditions. For more information on the Sharia investment products, visit their website at www.sentio-capital.com and start saving towards your investment goals today. Sentio Capital Management, invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.